Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, a UK-based Star Wars podcast with in-depth discussions and analysis sprinkled with some silliness. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
And I'm Star Wars Ian.
And we are back with a brand new episode of Star Wars. We are not bringing you a news breakdown, we're not reviewing any trailers, but we are reviewing some comics today. We are indeed going to be reviewing Star Wars Legacy of Vader. And we're going to be reviewing the first 12 issues, which were collected together in a trade paperback called The Reign of Kylo Ren. But for those who don't know what Legacy of Vader is, Legacy of Vader is a 12-issue Marvel Comics limited series. It started in 2025 and it's just finished in 2026. Written by Charles Soule and illustrated by Luke Ross, the series bridges the gap between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, following Kylo Ren as he attempts to establish his rule as Supreme Leader while obsessed with the legacy of his grandfather, Darth Vader. Ian, I know you've read past the first 6 issues even. I know you haven't read the finale. I suppose overall, do you like this series and are you excited to talk about the first 6 issues?
I do like the series, yeah. The only thing I will say is sometimes when it comes to characters, especially when they're tied to Darth Vader, it does feel like there's like a tick box thing going on. They have to go to certain places, which will obviously break down in the review, but you have to go to certain places, speak to certain people. When, like, sometimes I wish they do something a bit more original than go into certain places that we know that Vader is obviously synonymous with. But like I said, we'll go into that. But yeah, overall, I do enjoy it. It is a bit, I kind of like it, but it is kind of all over the place, the story. Like I said, Charles Soule is one of my favourite comic writers. He did do the Darth Vader, the second Darth Vader run, which was excellent, which was just after Revenge of the Sith and took it all the way up to when he constructed his fortress on Mustafar. So yeah, I do. Like I said, there is a slight tick boxy feeling to this comic series, which I was a bit like, all right, well, of course we're going there, and of course we're going there. But overall, I did enjoy it.
Indeed. So to give you a breakdown, what the blurb says on the back of the comic is, as Marvel enters a new era of Star Wars storytelling, a dark obsession of young Kylo Ren leads him to Mustafar. But what secrets does Fortress Vader hold for the young tyrant? And what face from the past will guide him on his quest? Next, Ren's formative journey takes him to the home planet of his grandfather, Anakin Skywalker, where he must face Gorduda the Hutt and her guards, plus a Rancor. Secrets of the past will be unearthed in the harsh sands of Mos Espa, and Kylo Ren and the First Order launch an assault on Naboo. So for those who don't know, for context, obviously following the death of Snoke in The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren's deeply unstable. He's dealing with the failure that he suffered against Luke Skywalker, the murder of his father, which he committed in The Force Awakens, and of course the rejection of Rey, who obviously turned him down after the battle with Snoke. He travels to Mustafar to delve into the secrets of Vader's castle. Obviously the goal, Kylo seeks to kill the past by understanding it, and as we're going to learn, he comes across a strange guide, at Vader's castle in Mustafar. And that is, of course, Van'Ee. Am I right in thinking that Van'Ee, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, he is, in Rogue One, we see sort of a dignitary sort of approach Vader and let him know that when he's helping them sort of in the back of tanks, things like that. Is this the same guy, do you think?
That is the same guy, yeah. It is the same guy. He's like an attendant to Darth Vader, a bit of a sycophant. But yeah, it is the same guy that obviously we see in Rogue One.
And he sort of reminds me a bit as well of sort of being similar to in Star Wars Rebels when we see sort of that Sith cultist who is inspecting sort of the temple.
Yeah, Minister Hayden, I think. I haven't watched Rebels in a couple of years, to be fair. I'm sure it's Minister Hayden. Yeah, he was there was a name for the project. I can't remember. It was mentioned in it was like Project Harvester, where they went round and like harvested force sensitive objects. There's a reference to it in Jedi Fallen Order. But yeah, they do have a similar look, these two characters. But yeah, here's 100% Vinay from Rogue One.
Now I've got a feeling that we have. I'm not saying there's loads of these guys, but there are obviously these Sith cultists who bow down to the Sith and want to sort of look after their every need. And there's a couple of them dotted around the Empire, it seems like, to look after Palpatine and Vader. Let's dive into issue 1. I suppose, and I believe Kylo Ren in this issue, he asserts his authority as supreme leader. He shows Snoke's corpse to the first officers and demands the construction of a new throne. He visits Mustafar and he confronts sort of his internal instability, and he turns to a memory of Vader. When you got the first issue, obviously I read it as a trip paperback, so I could read sort of 1 through 6 in one go, which is what I did. Obviously, you got this first issue. You obviously had an inkling of what it would be like. How did it hold up to what it was going to be? And sort of what's your favourite things about issue 1?
I do. I know I was saying obviously about a bit of tick boxing going on, but I did like the fact that he goes to Fortress Vader. Obviously, we didn't see that in The Rise of Skywalker. He goes to Mustafar, but we don't actually see him in Fortress Vader, which I think was a bit of a shame, because I think that would have been a cool scene and tied Rogue One with the sequel trilogy and all that. Because like casual Star Wars fans won't realise that's Mustafar and Darth Vader's castle. So yeah, I did enjoy that. Those he doesn't really like the people we see him killing at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker as well. I think they're the same type of people we see him killing in the Iron Fens on Mustafar, because the planet is starting to heal. So yeah, I enjoyed that. I did enjoy the Snoke part where obviously he showed his body. He did lie to them though and said it was the girl who did it, which is obviously not true. He did it himself, which he would do because he's not going to admit to killing the Supreme Leader of the First Order. So yeah, the first issue did what it needed for me. It set up the story. It got us to Fortress Vader. Obviously, the fortress recognises him through his bloodline and that. So yeah, I enjoyed the first issue for what it was.
Yeah, some of the things I love. So again, I love, same as you, going back to Mustafar. We see it as we recognise it a bit more. Obviously, it is healing. We see Vader's castle as well, which is what we probably should have seen in The Rise of Skywalker, I felt, to really tie that up. If you're going to go there, show us it. Even if it's in the background, show us it. But, yes. One thing I also loved was the artwork. I think it was done in quite a realistic way in this, where it tied me right back sort of into the events of The Last Jedi, if that makes sense. And then the aftermath of what I imagined it in my head to look like. So I thought the design aesthetic was really well done by the artists. Moving on from that, we go into issue 2, which, if I'm not mistaken, that is where we get more of Varney, obviously a servant of Vader. He guides Kylo on his quest to understand the past. They visit Tatooine, of course they do, and I'm sure you're going to tell us about that as a tick-boxy tick-tick. Even when we get to you. Obviously the childhood home of Anakin Skywalker, where Kylo faces and defeats a pair of Rancors, and he faces... and the forces, of Gorilla the Hutt, who he faces down. Obviously, Gorilla the Hutt's mentioned in The Phantom Menace as who owned Anakin before Watto won Anakin, betting on the pod races. Yeah, issue 2, we sort of get a bit more action. We go to a new planet, and we start to see some of Kylo's journey. I suppose in the first issue, we see Kylo go to Mustafar for the first time. We already know that he goes to Mustafar later in the beginning of Rise of Skywalker, so we know although we see him go there for the first time, we have seen him there before, where this is Kylo in a new environment. We haven't seen him on Tatooine before. Just take us through your thoughts on issue 2.
Yeah, like I said, this is one where it was a bit like, okay, of course, we're going to Tatooine. Mos Espa, he has to go see where his grandfather, Anakin Skywalker, was. So sometimes I wish they like I said, do something a bit more original. There was planets in the old Legends timeline that was tied to Darth Vader. You had the planet Vision, who had the Bass Castle and all that. It would have been interesting if they tied that in as well. Like I say, we've been to Tatooine a lot, even in the shows, but even in the Vader continuity, he goes to the first comic series of Vader where it was Kieran Gillen. I like that. It was just after A New Hope. He went back to Tatooine to speak to Jabba the Hutt. That was the first. That and the original Star Wars run were the first 2 comics out the gate from Disney, and they were good. But then we go back to Tatooine again in the second Darth Vader run, and then we go back again in the third Darth Vader run. It's a bit like, okay, we get it. Like, there's not really much more to say about Darth Vader and Tatooine. We know all that about all there is. Like I say, Kylo needs to experience that, and it was interesting in the timeline because obviously you see Gardulla the Hutt in charge of Mos Espa, so I don't know what that means for Boba Fett. Obviously, she wasn't in Jabba's palace, so whether Boba Fett and all, I don't really think they probably take that into continuity. Like I said, it's 20 years after the Book of Boba Fett. But yeah, I just wish sometimes, like I said, we see the things, we always see with Tatooine. It is one of my favourite planets, but I am getting a bit bored of going back to the same place over and over again. So yeah, like I said, I enjoyed the stuff with Gardulla. Obviously, in this issue, he gets imprisoned by her, and all that, and he has to use his internal rage to free himself. But yeah, like I said, it is a bit of a trope to go back to Tatooine with a Skywalker family member.
It is, and I think, at least we only spend one issue here. I think if they'd spent longer here, that's when it would have been definitely a tick box exercise for me. But I definitely see where you're coming from. And then something else that I thought about when I read this, then I forgot about it because it's a comic book and it's fun. But I just thought he got captured by Gardulla. Like, this is the supreme leader of the galaxy, right?
Yeah.
And he's been captured by Gardulla the Hutt and our cronies. And then he does escape, but he has to use some power to escape. And I did think that was maybe, it was a little bit too much, I thought.
Yeah.
When I first read it. But it was great to see him get out. It was great to see him face the Rancors, I think, and sort of answer that part of Anakin's legacy. It was really cool. And I love the fact that...
To be fair, the one thing I did like was Gardulla the Hutt obviously had ownership of Shmi and Anakin. So the one thing I did like is, obviously, I think he's in the next episode, but he does exact some sort of justice and revenge. Obviously not in the most noble way, but that is quite a nice poetic end for Gardulla the Hutt, really.
No, it certainly is. Into sort of number 3, where we sort of see, Ben imprisoned, and we see him sort of unleashing the Force to escape. I'm calling him Ben there, but he's of course Kylo Ren very much. Sort of, what was your thoughts on? Sort of, we get a nice little tie back of like visions of Vader using his rage in Rogue One and fighting rebels. It might not be the exact sequence in Rogue One, but it looks like it. And then we sort of have Vader, a vision of Vader face Ben as he's imprisoned. And then that sort of gets Ben to sort of use that internal rage and escape.
Yeah, it kind of goes off his insecurity where he says, "Oh, everything I achieved, I did it on my own." So that's probably Kylo Ren's internal doubt manifesting itself in. We obviously know Darth Vader's not really speaking to him. Like I said, Sith can't maintain their consciousness after death. So yeah, I think that's more of his internal doubt and coming out, and then obviously that's what leads him to escape Gardulla the Hutt and then send the First Order to take care of business.
He does indeed. So he escapes, and he's very much sort of in artwork that'll please many a Kylo Ren. Love how we see Kylo Ren shirtless, jacked in the sun. In Percy, that he kills some sort of... It's not a Krayt Dragon, I don't think. It's more like a Krayt Dragon mixed with a Triceratops. He kills that, and he's sort of wearing its skin and using its teeth as weapons. Now we see him manage to sort of kill these two travelers who have a radio, and he's able to call the First Order, obviously get in touch with Hux, and then they come and they cause some havoc at Gardulla's palace, shall we say.
They do indeed, yeah. He obviously orders an orbital bombardment, and that's the end of Well, we think that's the end of Gardulla the Hutt. I assume it is.
True Star Wars comic fashion, we think it's the end, but we don't know. She could pop up, I suppose.
No one's ever dead.
Yes. And then from there, we learn that in the next issue, we're going to be going to Naboo. And that is where we end up. So issue 4, sort of the journey takes Kylo to Naboo, the home planet of his grandmother, Padme Amidala, to uncover more of Vader's secrets. The Naboo storyline, I love the artwork of Naboo, and considering I've just been to Italy this summer, and sort of I've been to the I've been to the villa where it sort of was filmed, where Attack of the Clones was done. To see it sort of drawn in a comic book was lush, and I loved it. I loved how when we see him walking through the palaces, though, it's like an overgrown palace and it's like it's ruined. I thought that artwork was really cool. What was your thoughts on sort of on getting to Naboo? And I suppose it's Naboo straight after Tatooine, and sort of did you feel a bit of fatigue there, or were you sort of on board to see what would actually happen?
I'm more interested in Naboo than Tatooine, but yeah, like I said, it's another one where it's like, okay, we get it. Like, it's cool to see Kylo obviously interacting with stuff with his grandmother and all that, and his mother and stuff. But yeah, there was a little bit of like, all right, this is where the story's gonna go, like, and we're gonna just tick. This is why I thought the original series was just gonna be a tick box section through Darth Vader's life, and Kylo Ren will obviously see some stuff, and then that sort of thing. I did enjoy it. In the next issue, it did kind of baffle me how he turns, but yeah, we'll get onto that. But yeah, I always enjoy seeing Naboo. It's one of the most beautiful planets in Star Wars. Like I said, I still regularly watch the Phantom Menace, and it's for 1999 how it looks and all that. It looks unbelievable. Obviously, I know it was filmed in practical locations, but I just mean the wider Naboo sense. And I do like the whole aesthetic of Naboo with the Royal Guards and all that. Obviously, it's seen better times. It is Palpatine's home world. That is broached in this story about how they're kind of held with a knife at their throat, but in a nice way, because it's the Emperor's home world, if you know what I mean. Obviously, we do know that the Emperor did intend to destroy Naboo with Operation Cinder after the Battle of Endor, but that was stopped by Leia and Iden Versio and the New Republic. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, it's always interesting to see Naboo and get that context.
Yeah, we learned sort of the past of Naboo. We learn about Palpatine's rise through the Senate as a representative of Naboo. We sort of see some really good artwork of Naboo with the Imperial flags up and with the statue of Palpatine. And we also learn that after the war, that Naboo was sort of met with not a hatred, but like people were standoffish against Naboo because they feel that Naboo maybe profited from the fact that the Emperor was from that planet during the reign of the Empire.
When in terms, it probably wasn't. It was probably the opposite.
No, indeed.
Yeah.
Again, we see some more delicious artwork of sort of damaged chateaus. I see a damaged version of the film that I went to in off Lake Como, which was brilliant. And then we see sort of flashbacks to Anakin and Padme at the picnic, and then we see a flashback of them as they kiss as they go into the Geonosian battle. And then we also see their wedding day, which was pretty cool. We then also get sort of, an image of Vader and Varney saying, it was not the love that gave Vader the power, it was the loss. And that's like a full page document. And we get sort of a lot of dialogue in this, we have these people sort of mucking around at the palace. And sort of that's what sort of history has done to this place, I suppose. Yeah. And then we sort of see Kylo getting told he's a trespasser, even though technically it's probably his birthright to be there. And we see sort of all kinds of trouble kicking off as he fights these. It's not a militia, but it's almost like the ruling families are sort of almost like govern the area now, and they have their sort of their guards, their men. What was your thoughts on what Naboo's like at this point?
Was there a mention of Varuna? I'm sure there was a mention of Varuna in this, which is obviously maybe, I'm not sure. If it wasn't, then ignore me. But if it was Varuna, that's the old King of Naboo, which was heavily mentioned in the Darth Plagueis novels, one of the families. But I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and check that. Like I said,
so just to clarify, so we do meet a Storg Varuna.
There you go. Yes, we do. Yeah, like I said, he was King Varuna was the king of Naboo before Padme Amidala takes the throne. It's quite a big plot line of the Darth Plagueis novel, and them trying to get the hooks into Naboo. So that was a nice touch. Obviously, it's my favorite Star Wars book ever written is Darth Plagueis, and it's always nice to get a little tidbit of that, the here and there. Even though we'll probably never see him again. Even though we saw him in the Acolyte, we'll probably never see him again now. But yeah, like I said, I enjoyed it. It was quite sad to see Naboo, obviously a place of natural beauty, and we've seen it in his pomp in the prequel trilogy. And now, obviously, we've seen it not looking as good as it did. And to be fair, you could probably understand why the galaxy views Naboo as they do. They probably don't know that, obviously, Palpatine probably kept a close eye on Naboo, and if any sort of rebellion or anything from his home planet, he would not allow that. So yeah, they probably didn't have the best time in the reign of the Empire. So it's not fair, but you can see why people would judge them that way.
Indeed, and they don't have the best time here at the hands of Kylo Ren. He pretty much deals with that family's militia, and then the sort of two boys here who are mucking about, they get choked to death. It seems like the body counts pile up in this book. If you think about it, think about Mustafar, think about Tatooine, think about here. He is sort of waging war against these planets and these groups of people just because his emotions are all over the place, which is pretty wild and very, very dangerous. We
Man
skip
needs
to
Man needs counselling. He really does.
he certainly does, and we skip to sort of back with the First Order, and Kylo Ren sort of he begins to set up a. It's hard to explain, but like
of resistance.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
basically, issue 5, Kylo engages in a violent emotional struggle. He attacks Naboo, like with the First Order, but he's also built up his own militia on Naboo. So he's almost doing what Palpatine did in the Clone Wars, where he's controlling both sides of the conflict. But basically, he's massacring his own followers on both sides. Obviously, highlights he's in a turmoil and quest for transformation. But I found this quite disturbed in a way, but also I didn't quite understand the point of it. And I don't know what your thoughts were on this two-pronged attack he does.
This is the one thing I really didn't get. Like, I don't get why. Like, yeah, it just seemed so weird. Like, it was a bit like he attacks Naboo. I understand that. Fair enough. He wants to be king of Naboo. He even says that in the comic. But there is like a party. Like, why are you then fighting back against the First Order? Like, I don't think it was very well explained. Like, why he did it. I was a bit like, oh, that's weird. So yeah, this is the one issue out of the first 6 where I was like, no, I didn't really like that. I don't really get what's going on. It feels this is when I said the story started to go all over the place for me. I was a bit like, I really don't understand the motive of attacking somewhere and then joining up against them and then turning on them in the end and carrying on with the First Order. It's a bit, you know what I mean? It's a bit like jarring and a bit like, I know he's emotionally unstable, but that is pushing it. That is too much for me to suspend my disbelief, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, because it's almost like, so he presents himself as a sort of a freedom fighter and says, he gives the people in Naboo hope against the opposition of the First Order, while on the other side of it, he's ordering the First Order to attack Naboo. So in the meantime, whether he's lying to these Nabooians or not, but he is putting First Order troops in danger. And I just feel like the First Order knew that he would lose respect from them, if that makes sense. So it is very strange and all over the place. It does make us some awesome visuals. We see sort of the dreadnought in the Naboo sky. We see plenty of TIE fighters, which is pretty cool. I don't know what your thoughts were on some of the Naboo ships we see, where the sort of the clone Naboo starfighters with TIE wings.
Yeah, it's a bit like the old ugly starships from Star Wars Legends, where they just used to throw things together. Like you have an X-wing wing with a TIE fighter. You'd have X-wing S-foils with a TIE fighter cockpit. I did used to like the ugly ships that we used to get in Legends. That they were just mashed up ships together, and it does make sense. Obviously, if they've fallen on hard times, they probably can't maintain the Naboo Royal Starfighters. So yeah, it did make sense to me. And it was a cool visual. Like I said, I just found the story choice a bit baffling, really.
Do indeed. And sort of the issue ends with sort of the Naboo bodies of this freedom gang that he's raised and give hope to, sort of slain all over the place. And you sort of see him talking to Varney, saying that, he needs a new enemy, someone who will actually put up a fight. And you see Varney sort of a maniacal face. Yes, my prince, of course. I think I have just the thing, and then that's where we're going to go to the next episode, part 6. Issue. I keep calling them episodes. And that is where we next go to Corellia, obviously linked to his father. Obviously his father's homeworld, Corellia. When we get there with the sort of the First Order, absolutely wreaking havoc on the planet, really. Obviously, we know they have very, very good shipyards and things like that. I'm not sure whether Corellia's friends with the New Republic. Obviously, been destroyed, but maybe the Resistance. We're not sure. We do see Kylo Ren going to battle on his own again, sort of space battle that is, similar to The Last Jedi. What was your thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like I said, it's always I do like Kylo Ren in a starfighter. It's cool to see. And like I said, he's obviously the most famous. He's got the most famous bloodline when it comes to pilots. So yeah, that was a cool touch.
It certainly was, and sort of we see him sort of lead the assault, and yeah, Kylo wins the First Order, successful on Corellia, and we see Kylo in his new throne. Which the throne, what's your thoughts on the throne? It's almost like it's built to look like the top of Vader's castle. I thought. I don't know what you think about that.
I like that aesthetic. Like I said, it's got a bit like the tuning forks at the top. So yeah, I did like that. It makes sense if obviously Legacy of Vader, he wants to pay homage to his grandfather. Like what? So yeah, I didn't mind the design of the throne, but I can see why. Yeah, it would be a little bit like, oh, it looks like Vader's castle.
Indeed, and sort of we see he's on the throne. Hux is next to him. They're chanting Kylo Ren, Kylo Ren. Long live the Supreme Leader, Kylo Ren. They've got their arms up. It's very much a fascist sort of Nazi rally, but they're loving it. And it does make me think back to the problems I had on Naboo. Maybe it was to sort of give the First Order an enemy to fight and win. And then he's got a Corellia and defeated these. And then now the people of the First Order can see he's a Supreme Leader who wins battles. He hasn't just inherited the throne, if that makes sense.
Yeah. To be fair, maybe that is a fair point, but like I said, you probably just have him win a battle instead of set one up himself.
No, indeed. Indeed. We see sort of him and Hux go back and forth as being a bit more cordial here, which was sort of cool to see. And then we sort of go to, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or not. No, I can't be jumping ahead. We then see them go to Lati, which is in the mid-rim. And I believe there's a Jedi here. And that's who they go looking for. We see sort of flashbacks to Order 66. And Vader tracking down Jedi. What are your thoughts on sort of as we get towards the end of this issue and the halfway point in the story overall on this sort of snowy planet?
It was good to, like I said, it was good to. The Jedi thing, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit jaded to that as well. Like I said, like there's another Order 66 survivor. I get it. Like I said, they wiped out roughly about 90% of the Jedi Order with the Purge, so 100 or so Jedi left would make sense, but it does feel like it's just used as a storytelling beat. Oh, there's another new survivor, and there's another new survivor. I don't really think it cheapens any like sort of legacy when it comes to Luke or anything, but there is a bit like, oh, there is another new survivor. But I did like this character. Like I said, we can get into it when we review the second half of the story, but I did like this character, and I did like her backstory and how she survived Order 66. I thought it was quite a unique tale.
Indeed. So we see sort of Kylo on the snowy planet. He sort of tells Varney to wait. He says, "Wait here for me, Varney. I will bring you the Jedi's head." And then he walks off into a town where he goes to a bar. It kicks off. And then this Jedi character does capture his lightsaber off Kylo Ren. And he does say, "Looks like you've got yourself a cracked kyber crystal here." There's a bit of a joke there, but it obviously does hint at the fact that everything about Kylo is unhinged, just as the kyber crystal is as well. And sort of the issue ends. But for now, young man, let's chat. Obviously, you've read a bit more, so you know that we get a bit more about this Jedi in the next episode.
We do.
Yeah, but like obviously we ended a cliffhanger. If Kylo Ren's come to face a Jedi, we haven't seen that before. We've only ever seen him face Luke and Rey, who are Jedi, I suppose. But a Jedi who we don't know, which is quite cool.
Classically trained Jedi from the prequel era. Yeah.
Indeed. So it's teasing us that we're going to get that in the next half of the story, which we'll review once it's been read. So, but yeah, what's your thoughts on that cliffhanger ending?
It was cool. Like I said, it was cool to see, obviously, a bit of strikes of the Force Awakens when obviously Rey gets the lightsaber instead of him. And yeah, I do think obviously his just willingness to prove himself and just shake that Skywalker legacy is the reason he's not as effective as he could be. I think if he just was secure in himself, he'd be one of the most powerful Force users ever. Because let's be honest, he's Luke Skywalker's nephew, Anakin Skywalker's grandson, Princess Leia's son, Han Solo. He's got all that going on. So he's probably one of the most powerful things, but he just can't let go of his identity and who who he thinks people want him to be, and just be himself. If he was himself, like I don't think anyone would have a chance against him, really.
Indeed, there's some untamed, untapped potential and power there, as Snoke says. In the back of the trade paperback, so I said I've read the trade paperback, which collects the first 6 issues. There is like a fact file on Van A. Actually, I've just found it, so I'm going to read it. I don't know if you've read it, Ian.
I haven't. No, it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't the digital one. I can't remember.
But I will. I'm going to read it now. So, Van A, homeworld unknown, occupation caretaker of Fortress Vader, known associates Darth Vader, Kylo Ren, Orson Krennic, and Ren. So he's got a link to the Knights of Ren here, it seems. And what it says about him is the origins of the mysterious being known only as Van A are shrouded in mystery. Even his own accounts of his past are suspect, though he is believed to have once served as an Imperial officer in the position of Inspector, tasked with investigating reports of unusual deaths or misconduct among the Empire's troops. These duties brought Varney to the fierce lava world of Mustafar, a poisoned dark planet, where Sith Lord Darth Vader had built his fortress. He never left. Varney arrived on Mustafar to investigate the deaths of several Imperial stormtroopers assigned to Vader's garrison. Varney discovered they had perished after inhaling toxic lava fumes, a poison to which he too succumbed. Although Varney survived his exposure, his sanity did not. His mind broken, swirling with dark visions, he offered himself in internal service to Darth Vader. Varney performed his new duties with dedication and fervour until Vader's death at the Battle of Endor. Varney's ultimate fate is unknown, but rumours abound of a dark figure haunting Fortress Vader for many years after its original master's death, one that became more monstrous as the years went by. So yeah, that ties it sort of very interesting about Varney. What's your thoughts on the fact he knows Ren?
Yeah, like it makes sense. Like I said, they in the I can't remember which one. It's the War of the Bounty Hunters trilogy. War of the Bounty Hunters, Hidden Empire, Crimson Reign. The Knights of Ren do attempt to steal something from Fortress Vader, and obviously don't quite succeed, and then they fall under the control of the Emperor and that. So yeah, no, I think he would probably be familiar with most dark side, sex, and all that type of thing. He probably knows about the. Maybe no. To be fair, he probably doesn't know about the Final Order. I can't remember what Palpatine's Sith Eternal. Sorry, the Sith Eternal. That was only known to like Vader and Palpatine and all that. So yeah, I think it makes sense that he's aware of the Knights of Ren. They're pretty. The one thing I'll say about the Knights of Ren is that I do think they're the biggest missed opportunity ever. Like when they first were in the Force Awakens, they looked so cool and that, and I just have never warmed to the whole biker gang, like bro type of group. They do say, and obviously we got the tease with the Acolyte that potentially Chimera was going to be the first Knight of Ren. I think it does say that in the Art of the Acolyte book. So that would have been cool because Chimera is one of my favourite characters introduced in Star Wars in a long time. I thought he was excellent. So that would have been cool to see them because there is vague references to the Knights of Ren throughout, like, oh, look what you used to be and look what you are now. So I would like them to do a bit of, not retconning, but do a bit of restoration to that idea because I do think they were so cool in The Force Awakens when the rain was there and they were stood there and all that. That was really cool. So I would like them to do that. But in terms of Veneer, like I said, I went off on a bit of a tangent there about Knights of Ren because, like I said, I've never enjoyed the biker gang type vibe. I thought that was one of the not very interesting way to go with the characters. But in terms of Veneer, I do like that. I do like Veneer as a character as well, and I do like. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he would. He seems quite a Weasley guy. He probably eavesdrops on Vader all the time.
Indeed, and I think you're right about Knights of Ren. I think, you know, I've read them in a few different stories now. You know, and sometimes they're talked about as like formidable Force users, and you've got to have the Force to be in them. And then there's other times you see them, and particularly how they're depicted in Rise of Skywalker, as like what is actually special about them, apart from they just wear different outfits and like again they're like a gang type of thing. Yeah. So yeah, but there's definitely a lot of room there to tell that story, which would be really cool. Obviously, we might have got it if Akai had continued. I think Camille would have been great to fit into that and see that story evolve. I want to talk about the artwork of this series. So I love the artwork. I love how all of the visions of the past sort of to portray the events of the prequel trilogy and sort of Anakin's life. You know, I are really thought-evoking and heart-evoking. I love the might of the First Order. I know when you see the Dreadnought and you see the troops. Really, really cool. I've already said how I liked how Naboo was shown and things like that. Really, really cool.
To be fair, I've just remembered it's Luke Ross who's one of the artists, and Luke Ross is one of my favourite artists in Star Wars. He's done a fair few. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he did the Darth Maul 2017 comic. He did Thrawn. He did a lot of the Age of Republic. He did War of the Bounty Hunters, and he's done a lot of Star Wars comics and that. And he is one of my favourite artists in Star Wars. To be fair, I do like Luke Ross's work.
It certainly is good. What's your thoughts? Obviously, Varney is sort of a head on a sort of a robotic body, and it's sort of it's insect-like. It's almost reminded me a bit of sort of those monks on Jabba's palace.
Yeah, the Bowman monks. Yeah, like I said, it's an interesting design. You do have to explain because he looks quite elderly in Rogue One. But he's obviously using Sith techniques to extend his life because he must be well up there now in age. He's just a head in a jar, a bit like Walt Disney, if you believe the rumours. So I liked his design. I thought it fit. To be fair,
it didn't. It's sort of a head in a jar. Love that make me think of Futurama. But I think the design's cool, and I think it fits in with like what they're doing on Exegol. I know he's not there, but like with what they're trying to do with Palpatine, like the apparatus looks similar. He's prolonging his life by using dark arts and dark science. So it's sort of, although it's not exactly the same, it lends into that and the apparatus we see on Exegol, which I thought was really cool. And the artwork for Varney, I thought reminds me a bit of some of the art from like Hellboy and the BBRD by Mike Mignola when he draws sort of strange creatures that have been experimented on. And I think, it's not exactly the same, but that sort of aesthetic is there, and I really dig that and really enjoyed it. But I think that brings an end to sort of, that's the first 6 issues of Legacy of Vader down. Like I said, they were collected in this trade paperback, and it was called The Reign of Kylo Ren. What the next 6 are going to be called when they're collected, I do not know. That is when I will read the next 6, is when it is available in trade paperback. So I'm excited to finish the story, but also excited to see what that second book is going to be called as well. What was your thoughts on sort of the first half of the story from going in to sort of where it ended?
Like I said, overall I enjoyed it. Like I said, we've discussed it quite in depth now. Like, there was some things I didn't really enjoy. Like I said, just the rehashing of locations that we've seen over and over again, and like the twist where he fights himself. He fights the First Order, but he's with there was a bit of that where I was a bit like, okay, but overall, it's probably not my favourite Charles Soule run. Like I said, the Charles Soule Darth Vader run from 2017, I believe, or potentially 18, was outstanding from issue 1 all the way through. So yeah, no, like I said, but it's a fun story in that. I do think when we get into the second part, like potentially this could have been a setup to that Ben Solo movie that people are talking about, because I've seen like the last panel, which is interesting in that, but it just made me. I think Adam Driver's performance in the sequel trilogy is one of the greatest performances of acting in Star Wars. I love that character. I loved it ever since we saw the first trailer where he ignites his lightsaber and it's the crossguard lightsaber. So yeah, this just made me want more Ben Solo, Kylo Ren stories, because I do think, whatever you say about the sequel trilogy, some people are fans, some people are not, you can't really fault Adam Driver's performance as Kylo Ren. I think he was outstanding.
Definitely. I think there's a reason why everybody either like loves him and falls in love with him, or everybody like fears him. And that's because of like the absolute power that's in that performance from him. Obviously, the 6 issues left me obviously teased that where like we're going to see him fight a Jedi. So to me, that was like, wow. And then obviously left us on a cliffhanger. So I was a bit like, well done, but also damn, I need the next 6 issues now. And I'm excited when I read that book to talk about sort of the next 6 issues with you, Ian. Am I right in thinking that Charles Soule did another, I can't remember what it was called, but he did a Kylo Ren, it was like a 4-issue run, a Kylo Ren miniseries.
Yeah, The Rise of Kylo Ren, he did do that. Yeah, I did enjoy that. That was telling the story from when he destroyed Luke's Jedi Temple and what the immediate aftermath of that, and how he became Kylo Ren, because at that point he's still Ben Solo. But I recommend that to anyone. Yeah, it's a 4-issue series. It's called The Rise of Kylo Ren. I think it came out quite a while ago now. To be fair, let's just have a quick thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's been a while, but yeah, if anyone who
Might have
hasn't
been
read that,
pre-COVID.
this is going to make me feel old now, isn't it? How much? When did it come out?
I think it was pre-COVID.
2020. No, sorry, 2019. Bloody hell, time does go.
Yeah.
2019 has been, but that I highly recommend that. That was Charles Soule, but he's also done. He was obviously instrumental in the High Republic, and he did. I tell you one comic he did do, which I will recommend to anyone. There was a 5-issue miniseries of Lando back in 2015. That was excellent. That was a really good story, and he also did the Poe Dameron comic, which I think up there with the Kanan 12-issue series. He didn't do that one, but that one is some of the best Star Wars comics ever. The Poe Dameron and the Kanan the Last Padawan, which is my most underrated comic of all time. But yeah, he also did the Lando comic back in 2015, which I would recommend anyone to get.
A lot of good comics there mentioned. Yeah, I think as we wrap things up on Legacy of Vader Part 1, which is the first 6 issues, I think I enjoyed the kill the past aspect of it as a key theme. Kylo's mantra as he attempts to destroy reminders of his previous life. But I also liked by doing that, he was sort of getting revenge for Anakin Skywalker in some regard, especially on Tatooine. So I thought maybe you're sort of destroying reminders of his previous, of like the past, but you're also sort of fulfilling the destiny maybe of the past. I enjoyed the unreliable narrator. I love how Kylo's sort of recontextualizing his memories and family history as he goes through this journey with Varney. And it's very higgledy-piggledy, and it's very, as things suit this narrative that Varney and Kylo are trying to picture, then they draw things into it. And like I said, I enjoyed the unstable leadership. I think Kylo's in a struggle to deal with running the First Order, and obviously he's placing a lot of value on symbolic things like thrones and artifacts, but he's also has led him to 2 victories in battle as well, so he's trying to mix that up a bit. So yeah, these are sort of the key themes that I enjoyed from the first half of this story. Have you got any closing thoughts on Legacy of Vader, Ian?
No, I will say though that I enjoyed the second half of this story more, so it'll be interesting. Obviously, once you've read that, we can obviously get touch base again and go over the second half of the series.
Well, I'm very excited, and if you're saying that, I can't wait to get the next 6 issues, obviously as a trade paperback, and we'll be reading that, and then we'll go on the pod and review it. As a little bonus, Ian, I don't know if you want to talk some more Shadow Lord.
I certainly do, yes. That trailer came out the other day. Obviously, I couldn't make Sunday because I had a prior engagement. Yeah, I've loved Darth Maul since 1999. I think he's one of my favourite. And back then, he was just a bit of obviously a one-dimensional. He was the embodiment of evil. But since they brought him back in the Clone Wars, which when I first, because I was obviously in Star Wars as a kid, and then as I grew up, I kind of got out of it. But then when I started getting back into it, I first saw Clone Wars, and I was like, Darth Maul's alive. Like, that's stupid. But then what they actually have done with the character since, I think he's actually gone on to be one of the more nuanced, interesting characters. And the fact we're getting him back, and the fact that the show looks tremendous, and it's not too far away. Like I said, there's parts of that trailer that are absolutely stunning. The animation, every time Lucasfilm Animation seems to bring out a new show, you think, oh, it can't get any better. I thought the Bad Batch was beautiful, and this has gone up a level from that. So yeah, every time they bring a new show out, they do something else, and I do like. I saw that they were talking about some of the techniques they've used. They've used quite old school techniques with like glass matte paintings and painting on glass and all that for some of the effects. So yeah, I can't wait. Like I said, it's very interesting. It's different from the Bad Batch. I saw the interview that the creators gave, and it's a very serialized show. It's 1 to 12 episodes, which I'm a bit disappointed about. I could have done with more, but obviously as long as the story is concise and that. I don't know if they said we get any more series. I hope it's not just a one and done, because I think there's a lot of story to be told there. And I will make a prediction now, and I think it'll happen. Whether it's this series or whether they do another season of this series, he will fight Darth Vader, and he will obviously he won't die. Obviously, we know how Darth Maul's story ends, but he will fight Darth Vader, and he won't do very well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to digest. So obviously, we see Maul using his lightsaber a lot in this trailer. and he's being very, he's
Open.
in the scenes. He's jacked up. He's powerful. We see him pretty much owning Imperial stormtroopers in combat styles that we only see in video games like Jedi Fallen Order. The way he throws that lightsaber and it sort of cuts a group of them in half and it comes back, and then he's fighting Marok at the same time. Obviously, an Inquisitor. Looks like we're going to see at least 2 Inquisitors. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, we see the. I think the bird one from Tales of the Jedi, which Ahsoka kills, is the 11th brother, and then we obviously see Marok. I can't remember what his designation was in the Inquisitorius, but yeah, and obviously we know he I think it all but confirms in the trailer that he kills him. I'm sure he kills him in the trailer.
Well,
obviously we know. Yeah, go on.
I said it on Sunday that it's a quick edit, so it could be there to trick us. But he throws that lightsaber, it sort of takes out stormtroopers, it comes back, and then he takes down who he's fighting, and in the edit it looks like it's Marok, but it could be different in real life when we watch it. But obviously Marok could die here because obviously Marok's like a spirit inside of a suit, right?
I think it'll be revealed that he's resurrected through Night Sister magic, because that's what it looked like when he died in the soak. Obviously, he's just like air. He's just like green air. But yeah, very interested by the new Padawan. I can't remember her name, but obviously you see a Twi'lek tied to Darth Maul, you immediately think Darth Talon. Whether they go that way, I'm not sure they will. But one thing I am happy to see is Rook Kaspak, who's being played by Vanessa Marshall, which is nice. So she's back in Star Wars animation. Obviously, people don't know she played Harrison Dula in Star Wars Rebels and other associated projects with that. So yeah, this is probably the thing I'm most excited for out of anything out of The Mandalorian, Grogu, and Ahsoka season 2. I'm most excited for this. I think Star Wars, there's a heavy burden of evidence to say Star Wars is actually at its best when it's an animated show. I think they can take more risks and be a bit more weird. I don't think you can take the risks that they took in, especially with like Clone Wars, with stuff like Mortis and that. I'm not sure that would work in a movie. I'm not sure. But yeah, hugely excited for the show. Like, really excited. Like I said, Darth Maul's one of my favourite characters, and to see him back. And the fact it's only not even that now, really 2 months away, is hugely exciting. And I feel like we have been in a bit of a Star Wars lull for a while now. Obviously, we had Andor last year, but after that, we didn't really get much last year, and it kind of felt a bit of a way. But sometimes absence is better than being oversaturated.
It is indeed, especially if it's quality, and I think this show like it could be absolutely quality. You obviously mentioned Darth Talon there. Obviously, we know Maul is not a Darth, so if he is teaching this Twi'lek to be sort of his apprentice, they're probably not getting the Darth title from Maul. Do you think there's a chance that this Twi'lek moves away from Maul, maybe comes under the spell of the Emperor?
I'm not sure. I'd have to obviously see a bit more. Like I said, I think they know what they're doing with it being a Twi'lek, and then in certain aspects of the trailer, she has very like red skin, but I think that's lighting. Obviously, that is a telltale marker, and it is interesting because the original treatment, I think, for Episode 7 would have seen, with George Lucas's Episode 7, would have seen Darth Maul and Darth Talon team up. So they are potentially using ideas from George, and the main thing I'm happy for is to see Sam Witwer back as Maul. Like, Sam Witwer has played 2 of my favourite characters in Star Wars. He's obviously played Darth Maul, and now he played Starkiller, who we got a little crumb of Starkiller in Andor with his helmet in Luthen Rail's shop. So yeah, I'm hugely excited. And Sam Witwer is probably the biggest Star Wars nerd on the planet. So, and it was quite interesting to see an interview with him. He did a celebration where he was constantly pitching ideas for the Clone Wars and like Ahsoka, and they were like, well, you can't do that because this is not Darth Maul's story, this is not Darth Maul's show. But now it is Darth Maul's show. So they can do it.
It certainly is. What's your thoughts on, obviously we see Maul sort of looking to build up a criminal syndicate. Obviously we see in Solo that he's very much in the shadows but running a criminal syndicate from the darkness. Do you think we'll see Kira?
This is the thing I was saying about seasons, because eventually he ends up stranded on Malachor, but this is a year after the Clone Wars, so it's way too early for Kira to come into the fold. So hopefully we'll get multiple seasons of this, and eventually we'll get the answer as to how he ends up stranded on Malachor and all that type of thing. But yeah, it's too early for Kira, because I think Solo is the events of Solo is 5 years before New Hope. So yeah, it's too early for Kira. So we won't see Kira unless there's multiple seasons.
Well, let's see. Let's see what happens. Any closing thoughts on Maul?
No, hugely excited. Like I said, I can't wait. Roll on April 6th, double premiere, and yeah, I'll be definitely available to break them down because, like I said, and it's quite interesting as well. Last thing, it's good to see a project from a quote unquote evil person's point of view. We've all obviously been in the hero, and it's very interesting to see what Sam Witwer's been saying about Maul. He said he's obviously not the good guy, but this show will give him more nuance. He's not going to all of a sudden become a good guy which you're rooting for, because you shouldn't root for Maul. He's a terrible person, really. But yeah, very interested to see how they take a lead from a villainous perspective.
It certainly is. That brings an end to this episode of Star Wars. Ian, thank you very much for joining me. Where can the people find you on socials?
You can find me on Instagram at Star Wars Ian.
And you can find myself. I am on Instagram and I am on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Geordie Jedi Pete. You can also find the podcast on X at Boars Star. And you can find the podcast everywhere else, including Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, at Star Wars Podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review, a lovely little sentence. It helps people find the show and it makes us smile all week. And if you're listening on any of the other wonderful podcast applications out there and there is a feature to leave a review, leave us all of the stars. Leave us a lovely sentence. Again, it helps people find the show and it keeps us smiling all week. And if you are leaving reviews, share them with us on social media and we might just send you some goodies in the post. That brings an end to this episode of Star Wars. May the Force be with you all. And remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.